Welcome, everyone. This is Glenda Dawson, and I have LD here with me, and you're watching Glenda's Dragon's Den. We are seen live on the Glenda's Magical Creations channel on the Conscious Awakening Network on Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and many other streaming platforms. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's here with us every week, who follows us and just supports us. It's really nice to see you guys and to hear from you. And today is a very special day. We have a lot of energies going all around us, and we have a superb special guest, Catherine Lanigan. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I am great, and it is such an honor to be here. I've looked forward to this. I'm so excited to share with everybody everything that we're going to do. So this is great.
This is fantastic. So tell our audience a little about you, or a lot about you, whatever.
Well, I am an author. I am probably most well known for my romance books. I have 45 books, both fiction and nonfiction, in print, all around the world. I've been published for 44 years. So next year is my 45th year. So that's I probably need to get a cake. What do you think?
I think so.
And but what we're going to talk about tonight are my angel books and a few other, some of my nonfiction things. But I am most proud of my angel books, and I do have a story of why they came into being, if that's okay for me to tell that.
Of course.
In 1987, both my parents were at the Grand Canyon, and both of them had heart attacks looking at the Grand Canyon. And so the ambulance came and got my mother and took her to the hospital in Flagstaff. And as they were rolling my mother into the ICU unit, my father dropped dead outside the doors of the ICU. And he was dead for 22 minutes. It took, they broke all of his ribs, his sternum, his clavicle, and a few other bones, trying to bring him back because he wouldn't come back. But they did. They brought him back. So my sister called me. She was in Chicago. I lived in Houston at the time. And she called and she said, told me what was going on. So we met. She flew from Chicago to Phoenix. And I met her in Phoenix. And then we flew in a little puddle jumper from Phoenix up to Flagstaff. Now, this was back in 1987 when there were not quite the rules for flying that there are today. So there was a thunderstorm. So, and of course, the pilot's going, not a problem. It's like one of those Harrison Ford movies where it's okay. We'll be all right. And I mean, we were just bouncing all over the place, but we got there. And he was right. Not a problem. We landed okay. Got to it was almost midnight by the time we finally got to the hospital. And of course, everything was all shut down, but they knew we were coming in from a long way away. And so my sister and I walked into the room, and my dad he knew we were coming. My mother was there, and he was sitting up in his bed, and he said, "Oh, Kath, I'm so glad you're here. I have something I need to tell you." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Well, the first thing I need to tell you is that I love you." And now I was about 41 or 42 years old at the time. And my father had never told me that he loved me without me prompting him. Like a little kid, you could say, "I love you, Daddy." And he says, "Oh, I love you too," that kind of thing. So, back then, parents weren't all that demonstrative about their emotions, etc. But he would never say, "I love you," with just come out and say it. So I was just like, wow, where did that come from? And he said, "Well, that's the first thing I have to tell you. And then the second thing I have to tell you is that I want to tell you about what happened to me when I died." And I said, "Okay." Now, first of all, my father was the most intelligent man I have ever met. I mean, I've met some intelligent people now, but he was Phi Beta Kappa at Notre Dame. He was an attorney. He had a photographic memory. I mean, I worked for him as like a junior paralegal kind of thing. And I mean, he could tell me to go to the law library, pick out book so-and-so of the state law, open it to page 365, and in the second paragraph on the right-hand page, it would say such and such, but he needed to have the book to get the exact translation. He was that good.
Mm.
So, you know, it was really tough being that guy's kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? So anyway, and we were raised very, very Catholic. I mean, really Catholic. So Catholics, so he said, I want to tell you what happened on the other side. Well, I had heard the term the other side, but Catholics called the other side heaven back then, you know? And I said, well, you mean in heaven? He said, actually, that's not what they call it over there. They call it the other side. And I said, oh, interesting. Well, we'll go from there. And he said, well, the first thing I did was, he said, you know, I met with the being of light. And I said, you mean an angel? And he goes, no, 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 no. I met with the being of light. The angels are the other guys. They were over there. And I went, okay, you know. And I said, but you saw angels? He goes, oh yeah, sure. They were over there. And he said, you know, they do all that singing and stuff. A lot of humming. There's a lot of humming going on over in that on the other side. And he had a great sense of humor, obviously, you know. So I said, so what has this got to do with me? And he said, well, the being of light told me that you're going to write a book. And I said, well, Dad, since I've already published 8 or 9 of them, that's really not a whole new gig for me, you know. That's not. And he said, no, that's not what we're talking about. He said, you're going to write books about angels, about my experience. And he said, all those things that happened to you in your childhood, where I punished you for seeing angels and I punished you for seeing, you know, fairy, because I saw fairies and elves, and, you know, and back then it was just, oh, it's just your imagination, and it didn't really happen, you know. And he said, then you're going to take, what you're going to do is you're going to meet people and you're going to take their experiences and all your experiences, your mother's experiences, and you're going to chronicle them in a journal, in a book, and it's going to get published. And he said, and then when you die, you will be judged on that work. And I went, oh, no. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. I was like, okay. Well, you know, it was the craziest thing, because right after that, I sat down, and I mean, I still was under contract for romances and other stuff that I was doing, but I started putting stories together. And sure enough, every time I go on a radio show or a TV show, you know, there was a cameraman or a DJ or, you know, somebody who said, you know what? I got to tell you the story that happened to me. Is the craziest thing. You know, nobody believes me. And they would tell me their story. And I would say, can I call you and then really write this down, or we can meet for lunch, you know, or take them out to dinner or something. And I said, because I need that story for my book. And sure enough, I mean, it didn't take but a year, and I had compiled all of those stories plus my own. And I had my first book, which was Angel Watch, which is let me hold it up. It's the first one in the series. And back then, that nobody was doing that. Everybody was quiet, you know. It wasn't like today, you know. Like, I'm sure the kids today will go like, well, everybody knows that. No, they don't. No one would talk about it. My favorite stories were from pastors and even priests who said, I have to tell you about my angel story, or I saw Virgin, you know, I saw the Blessed Virgin, or I saw Mother Mary, or I had this experience. And I said, well, and I never told anybody. And I go, well, why not? And they said, well, because they think I was crazy. You know, I'd lose my job. My congregation would turn their back on me. They'd think I was doing black magic or something. And that is exactly what the mentality was at that time. I was one of the very first to come out and talk about it on TV, you know, talk about on talk shows. And I mean, back then we had talk shows.
Right.
And then I did the second one, and then I did the third one. And it was amazing to me that once somebody started talking, they would say, well, you know what? I've got 4 or 5 more. Can I send them to you? Sure, not a problem. And but let me get back to my dad's story. So anyway, after he tells me this, he said, and I said, well, then when you were talking to the being of light, I said, because he'd been sick and had some heart problems and stuff, and I said, well, why didn't you stay over there? I said, did you like it over there? He said, oh, it's wonderful. There's so much love. It's warm. It's loving. It's comfortable. There's no pain. And I said, well, why didn't you stay there? And he said, they wouldn't let me. They sent me back. And I said, why? And he said, because I was sent back to Earth to learn the only lesson that a human being is ever sent to the Earth plane to learn. And I said, what is that lesson? He said, it's the lesson of love. And I didn't learn it yet.
Mm.
It's a lesson of love with consequences.
Yes.
That's right.
I want to stop you because when people talk about the other side and how wonderful it is and all, I want to make sure that people understand your father didn't choose to have that heart attack. And
right.
You can't decide that it's, you're done here and it's time to go over there.
Right.
We're here to do what we're here to do. And, when that's done, when Providence decides it's time for you to go to the other side, that's one thing, but nobody decides for themselves they're done and I'm just calling it quits, because that's consequence right there, and you got to redo, and nobody really wants to have to go through all that again, correct?
Well, I'll tell you about my near-death experience.
Okay.
So I was 25 years old. I was giving birth to my son, and I was having a pretty rough time of it. I was about 22 hours into it. I was bleeding to death at the time. He was stuck in the birth canal. I was in a little teeny town here in Indiana. There was no one licensed to do a C-section except for one guy who was not in town. He was on vacation that night. It was the 19th of August. It was 110 degrees out at night at 8:00 when I went to the hospital. They took me, I was in the labor room for only an hour, immediately took me into the delivery room because I was dilated enough, but I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Well, anyway, long story short, at 3:00 in the morning, they still hadn't found the doctor, but the nurses, the hospitalist or whoever, was overseeing everything, went to my husband and he said, we're going to try and find the doctor's coming. He's on his way from Chicago. And he said, and he's going to talk to you as soon as he examines your wife. And he said, she's very weak right now. So the doctor got there and he immediately went out to my husband and he said, here's the deal. You have a decision you have to make. We can save your baby or we can save your wife, but we can't save them both. And he said, and so my husband at that time said, I want you to save my wife. And the doctor said, it'll be easier if we save the baby. We can't save your wife. She's not going to make it. So he said, well, do whatever you can and try and save her. So he went in, we had a C-section and I heard my baby cry in my stomach before they pulled him out, because I had a C-section. And then as soon as I heard the nurse say, I said, I want to see my baby. And she said, we have to fix his head first. And I was like, oh God. Well, at that point, I died. And I rose out of my body and I saw the hospital where they had gone to my husband and told him that they were losing me at that point. I heard them say, her blood pressure's dropping. We're losing her. And I saw him. It was like you could see a blue, like a cutaway of the hospital, all the hallways and the rooms and all this kind of stuff. And I saw him walking out of the hospital. And I was like, wow, he's walking out of the hospital. And I kept rising up higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And I went where the cosmos. I was in the cosmos and I felt just, I was not really on the other side, but I heard this voice that, was whoever it was. I thought it was God,
Right.
but it's booming male kind of heavy voice, and said, you are here. And I said, yes. And I said, oh, I love it here. It's so warm and wonderful, and there's no pain, and this is just great. And then they said, well, you have a choice. And I said, what is my choice? And they said, you can stay here with us and go on to, to the other side,
Mhm.
or you can go back. And I said, well, why would I want to go back? And they said, do you see the hospital? And I looked down at the hospital, and I saw my husband walk out, and they said, if you don't go back, your husband does not care for your son. He will not care for him. And if you don't go back, there will be no one to care for him. You will die for him, but will you live for him? And I said, I will go back and take care of my son. And immediately I was back in my body. It was the next day. And so I understand what it is that you're saying, but I know from my own experience, I was given a choice.
But you were given a choice in that dimension. What I'm
Right.
talking about is people here that say, it's
yeah.
too tough. I'm done.
Right.
I want to go there. And I
No,
want to make
that's a
sure
whole
that that
different
message is not the
Yeah.
message they walk away from this show with.
Oh,
Yes, you were given a choice there,
no. Yeah, there. Yeah, there. I was there.
but you didn't choose to go there. That was circumstance,
Right.
and that was all part of your soul evolution.
Right.
And coming back, I think, has worked out pretty well for you. So
I mean,
I just don't want people to look at this and use it as an excuse to give up.
Oh,
That's
correct.
my concern in these shows.
Oh, correct. There's absolutely. I mean, there's no way. I mean, yeah. I mean, I love life. I've always been a happy person. I love life. I love giving life and making other people happy. When they're really down, I'm pretty good at making them feel a little bit better. So, yeah.
But thank you for clarifying that once you're there, yes, you have choices to make, and you made obviously the best choice.
Yeah, I said,
because that's
no,
always there,
Yeah, I was like, it's
but you
really
got stuff to
wonderful
do
here.
here,
I can
so-
tell you, it's really wonderful here. But I got to tell you what is, I'm going to go take care of my baby.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
So anyway, that was one of my near-death experiences. So yeah, but that's how my angel books came to be.
Mhm.
Was that my father, and each time I would finish one, he was just like, well, where's the next one? Where's the next one? He just loved them. And then right after that, whenever, it used to be when I would call my mom or I call home, because I lived in Houston. I lived a long way away, and my dad would answer the phone. As soon as he asked, oh, hi, Catherine. Well, yeah, I suppose you want to talk to your mom, and he'd hand the phone to my mother, right? And then after that, when I would call, he was just chatty Kathy. He says, how are you doing? How's everybody? How's Ryan? How's your garden? What's going on down there? Are you having a good time? Did you get to go to the beach this, I mean, and I was like, where is this coming from? Wow.
You realized the true meaning of being here.
Yeah.
Being
exactly.
present.
Exactly.
Being present.
So
And being here for you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And he was different with all the rest of the kids too at that time. And then by then he had several more little grandchildren, and they just loved their grandpa. And he did a lot of things with them too, even though he was very sick those last 5 years, and my mother had to do a lot to take care of him. Right. But he really did do a lot for all the little grandchildren and stuff. And they do remember him, very fondly. So that's all emotion and emoting, that well received. So that's great.
And very important.
Yes. And very important.
Very important.
Yeah.
He taught them how to love.
Yes. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So it turned out great.
Mm-hmm. So your father had that one experience that he talked to you about, or were there others?
Well, he had quite a few experiences, which are very interesting. When he finally was dying, he was in the hospital. I flew up from Houston. I was with him for that last week, and I was the only one that was really here, other than my mother.
Mhm.
And so I would go and sit with him he was in the hospital,
Right.
and he was in a lot of pain. And I said, Daddy, why don't you take something for the pain? You're having all this pain and everything. And he said, absolutely not. I have not taken a Tylenol. I have not taken anything. I will not. And I said, why? And he said, I have always been proud of my brain. And I want my grandchildren and my children to know that I was clear brained until the day that I died, so that when I tell you the stories that I'm going to tell you, you will know that I did not have any medication. I was not hallucinating. I was not seeing things, but I did see the Blessed Virgin come to me. I did see angels in the room. And he said, I am between the worlds.
Mhm.
I wake up sometimes, and he said, I'll be on earth with you. Sometimes I wake up and I'm not on earth with you. I'm in another dimension. And he said, one thing you need to truly understand, Catherine, is the world that you live in is the dream. It's not real. Now, this was in 1992 that he died.
Mm.
And he said, you live in a dream world. It is not reality. He said, the reality is where I'm going. He said, I've been there plenty of times. I'll go off and on all the time.
Mm.
And he said, that's the real world. And he said, there is absolute love and peace and joy and happiness there. And he said, that's life. That's where everybody is going. And that's where home is.
Mm.
And he said, and the place where you live, he said, it's just all manipulation and it's all just a dream.
What's the classroom?
Huh?
It's the classroom.
Yes, the classroom. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we all learn lessons. Well, you still have a class, you still go to class when you get out of here too. So I do know that from plenty of people that have passed on and then come back and told me about it too. So, but he did see, one day we were sitting there. I was opposite his bed and my mother was sitting next to him, and there were a lot of folks that appeared in that room. And so we were sitting there, and I said, Daddy, there is a little boy standing next to your bed, next to Mother. And he said, who is it? And I said, well, he says his name is Andrew. And my mother says, well, I don't see a damn thing. I said, well, there's a little boy there. He said his name is Andrew. I said, he's got a white shirt on, and he's got like little short black pants on with little suspenders, and then socks and Oxford kind of shoes, and I said, he's got red hair, and he said his name is Andrew. He said, how old? And my father says, well, how old is he? I said, he says he's about 2 years old. And I said, he says that he's your brother. And my mother laughed, and she said, that's ridiculous. He never had a brother that his name was Andrew. My father sat up straight in his bed, and he said, now my parents have been married for 44 years at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They went through World War II together and all this stuff. And my dad said, I never told you, Dorothy. I had a brother whose name was Andrew. He had red hair, and he died when he was 2 years old.
Oof.
And my mother just sat back and went, okay. I'm out of this conversation. And then one day I was sitting there, and my mother again was sitting, she was doing some embroidery or something, sitting next to my father. And my father wakes up from his, nap that he was taking. He said, Catherine, there is a human being sitting on top of your head. And I said, really? And I said, is it a man or a woman? He said, it's a woman. He said, well, now she's standing next to you. And he said, can you see her? And I said, yes. And my mother says, well, I don't see anybody. And yeah, again, my dad says, well, you never do. Right? And I said, she's tall and she's thin. And he said, yes, she's very slender. And I said, does she have on a brown riding habit? And he said, yes. And I said, does she have a hat on? And he said, yes. And boots. And he said, she has big eyes, just like you. And I said, she said her name is Barbara, and she has brown hair. And I said, her clothes are very, very expensive. And my mother said, ask where she's from. And I said, she says she's from San Francisco. And she said, that's my Aunt Barbara. And my Aunt Barbara, and she said, ask when what was the years that she lived in San Francisco. And I said, she lived there from 1900 until right after the San Francisco earthquake. You know, well, they lived there after the San Francisco earthquake, but she lived there during that. And I said, well, she's got really nice clothes. I mean, this woman's really decked out, you know. And my mother said she was Uncle Wilbur's wife, and he sent her on a train from San Francisco to New York so she could get the Queen Mary and go to Paris and get a new wardrobe every fall and every spring. And that's why she had such beautiful clothes on.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this is really a cool thing that we're all going through, you know? Right?
So you're just telling old family stories in these novel.
I don't even have to go anywhere else to get all this stuff.
Just as an aside, real quick, do you know who I went to high school with?
No, who?
James Van Prague.
Did you really?
And we were in plays together.
Oh my God, really?
We wrote plays for what they used to call Sing, and I played the mayor, he played my frump. And his pictures of us in the 76 yearbook. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I mean,
so
like,
you got the story. You got the whole deal.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. That's really cool. Are you still in contact with him now?
I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not. You know, we weren't terribly close in high school, and he was having his experiences there, and he was ahead of me. So.
Oh, sure.
So he took off, and but I still, you know, have pictures of him. So it's
yeah.
So this is all, you know, like all unfolding around me, and it's fun, you know, to have people that have also experienced this and to be able to share it with everybody else. So thank you so much for, you know, getting the word out to your circle.
Yeah. And believe me, it has really taken some time. And what's interesting to me is that through the COVID, even though everybody was all locked down and shut up and, you know, and had to wear diapers on their face and all that kind of thing, there's been a lot of people, because they had that time alone, they've been able to come to grips with, you know, who am I and my spiritual self and my spiritual being. And so we've seen a lot of people, certainly I have, coming forth and saying, you know what, I'm not afraid to tell about the story where I saw an angel when I was 3 years old, or I was taken up, you know, I saw ETs, or I've had many experiences with, you know, my dead relatives coming to me. I was 14 when my grandmother died, and just a few days after her death, she showed up in the flesh at the end of my bed. And I was like, Grandma, what are you doing here? We just put you, and I'm only 13, 14. I said, we just put you in the ground. You're in a grave, you know, you're scaring me. And she said, well, I didn't really die. That's the first thing I have to tell you. I'm not really dead. And I'm going, well, then what are you? You know? And she said, well, I'm there. I'm in heaven, but I'm still here. I have some messages for you. I want you to tell your mother. I want you to tell your mother that I love her. And she said, but I'm here to tell you that when you grow up, you're going to be a writer. And I said, I am. Now, at that point, I did want to be a writer. I wanted to be a journalist. I never thought about being a novelist, but I wanted to be a journalist. And because I thought I'd get to travel a whole lot. I just thought that was a cool gig. And she said, and then when you grow up, I want you to write my story. And I said, okay, I will try to do that. And then she said, I want you to tell your mother that I love her, and I want you to take care of your mother. And I said, wait a minute, I'm the child. She's the mother. And she said, you have never been her child. You have always been her mother. And that's the first time I realized that there is reincarnation. I had never heard the word reincarnation, but after that, I went on this, like, let's delve deep into this library and find out, now, what did she mean by it? Because I got this dead person coming to me to tell me this piece of knowledge. Right. And so I did not take that lightly. And so that was the beginning of me, you know, and then of course I made the grave mistake of going to a priest and asking him about it. He goes, "Who told you this? You know, that's not true. That's not true. You know, that just forget that ever happened." I'm going, "It's my dead grandmother, my favorite grandmother. She came to talk to me. Are you kidding me?" What an idiot.
Yeah.
Let's get another priest in here.
And where does he get his info from?
Yeah, right. He needs
You
to
know,
go back to school. So anyway, that was the beginning of me really wanting to find out really deep answers to everything. And then when I went to college, I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and I was fortunate enough to get fantastic professors and a really great. I have a theology minor and a minor in metaphysics and philosophy, and I had really, really good professors who, you know, you could stay after and talk to them for 3 or 4 hours, and you'd get, you know, really get the skinny on whatever you want to talk about. It was great. Yeah, it was great.
So you wrote about your grandmother?
And I wrote about my grandmother. I have several stories about my grandmother. I sure did. They're in my books. Yeah.
Good.
She was very psychic. My grandmother and my mother, even though my mother was like, you know, this when my dad was dying, she was very psychic as we were growing up. So my grandmother was psychic, my mother was psychic, and my sister was psychic, not to the degree that I am, but somewhat. My sister really put a kibosh on it so that she could live in this small town.
Right.
I mean, literally.
Her environment required
her to keep her mouth shut.
Right.
Now, when she and I were together, different story.
So we're more than halfway through the show. Let's put up some contact information for you. What do you want first?
Well, my website is www.catherinelanigan.com. But just, you know, anybody wants to know anything, I'm on Amazon. I've got an author page, but, you know, just Google Catherine Lanigan. It's Catherine with a C, Catherine, Lanigan, Lanigan, and all kinds of stuff pops up. There's information there about, I've got a couple YouTube things that were when we did my Sweetest Heart movie that's on a Hallmark channel, which I understand it just played the other night. One of my girlfriends called and said, "I'm here watching your movie and eating way too many potato chips." So that's kind of fun. You know? So that's the best way to do it. Just Google it. You can find YouTube stuff, and some of my podcasts are out there. Yours will be on there. You know, that's how they see everything.
Yeah.
And you're also very active with survivors of abuse.
I am. I wrote a book called Evolving Mr. Wrong, The Evolving Woman Surviving Mr. Wrong. And at one time, I went around to 43 different women's shelters around the United States and spoke with the advocates that were there, that were both the legal advocates, medical advocates, and their advocates there that brought them in. Shelters that were truly in places. I mean, you talk about being in places where nobody knew where you were, is where these shelters are. I mean, they're once someone who is abused and they're trying to hide away, this is how you do it. And we went from New York all across the eastern seaboard, all across, and I mean all the way to California, Oregon, all the middle states. I mean, one night we had to go we did Pennsylvania, Cleveland. We finished a midnight show. I'm not kidding. A midnight show. I got in the car, my agent and I got in the car. I drove us to Chicago. We got there in order to book a hotel near the airport. We slept for 1 hour. Got on the plane at 6 o'clock, got to Denver in time to do morning drive time radio and then morning TV talk show in Denver that next day. And it was like that we were gone for 30 days. We did 2 weeks. We had 2 days off, and then we did another 2 weeks. But I heard stories that to this day still curl my hair. of the abuse that people go through, and it's on both sides. It's male and female. It's not like, you know, it just happens to girls. It does happen to males as well.
Right.
And that was back in the, you know, when I didn't even get to child abuse, you know. We just did. And the book itself it's not in print anymore, but we worked with the domestic violence hotline and with the National Domestic Violence centers to really get the word out. When that book came out was around 1999, and there was not a lot of information out there. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't know is, like, in the state of Texas, because I lived in Texas at the time. In the state of Texas, there are laws in Texas that the Texas government, if you are an abused woman and you get out and you stay out, big point there,
right?
Stay out. The state of Texas will pay for you to go to college or to a school to learn a skill for you to get a job. I worked very heavily with the Star of Hope mission in Houston, Texas, that does give shelter to women and children. I wrote another book called Becoming, and that is all about the Star of Hope and about an abused woman. That is a novel that then led to me doing the nonfiction book, The Evolving Woman. And I did a lot of work for decades to bring awareness to domestic violence. And you know, when I gave my speeches, I said, for every woman is just start saving your pennies, have another set of keys. So you've got keys, a packed suitcase under the bed. And the minute that you know that you need anything, you get those keys, you get that car, and you get the children, and you get out. You can't change someone who's trying to beat you and beat the kids. You have to get out, get help. And many times it's not family that's going to help you. It's because they're like, oh, you have to stay together because of your religion, your family, the family's reputation. That comes into play a lot of times, believe it or not. Oh, the family is just going to be so upset to find out that they don't care that you're getting beaten up to death. They care that you're getting a divorce.
Right.
It's ridiculous. And that the family's going to be broken and the kids have to go to a different school. And, oh, gee whiz, maybe we might have to help out. That kind of thing. It's just, you know, it just turns your stomach the way that some people just turn on their own that way. And yet you'll have a friend that'll just open that door and say, sure, come on in. Let me get you a plate of food. Yep. And let me give you some bucks to get you started. You know, it is amazing.
I was a paralegal, so I know exactly how that is.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, there's so many good people in this world, and we're just afraid to say what's going on with our life so that we can go get help. You know, there's so many things, and especially now, there's so many things that can help. And it's wonderful how we do. You know, America has, you know, we're always down on Americans. Everybody's down on Americans. Americans do this, Americans do this. They do this and they do that. That's all wrong. But you know what? It's always been America that comes to help everybody when something goes wrong. You know, if there's an earthquake, we're there to help. If there is a flood, you know, we're there to help our neighbor get out. You know, when you see, especially in Houston, I saw it because we always had hurricanes. You know, we had neighbors going house to house with a boat and picking up kids and dogs and cats and everyone, taking everybody to safe ground. And that's the stuff that just makes me, you know, so proud to be an American, you know. And I know it happens in other countries, but, you know, I've only lived in South America, so I don't know about all the other countries.
But right now, it's your angels that are driving you.
Yes.
Oh, yes. They are driving me big time.
And you're also tied into one of the skulls.
The Mitchell Hedges crystal skull. Yeah, the
Yes.
Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, which is the oldest artifact around. And it's people asked tonight, it's the oldest crystal skull. So that's verified. That's fact.
So how is that now driving your work?
One of the things I want to do, it's driving my work in many ways, because Bill and I go around and meet with people, or we even do Zooms and meet with people where they want to meet with the crystal skull, and the skull reflects back to a person who they are, so that they can remember who they are and what their gifts are. And when we say gifts, I don't mean like, oh, you can, draw a stick figure. I mean your psychic gifts, your loving gifts that you have to help humanity, help your neighbor, help your friends, help your family. So because when you change yourself and you do the things for yourself that make you feel good about yourself, you change the world. You change your world, you change the world of your family. You're more loving to your family, to your kids, and you do things for your spouse and your neighbor. It just giving a smile. I remember when my mother had to go stay in an assisted living, and she said to me, she fought like tooth and nail, of course, like, I'm not gonna go do that, and she did. And then she was there about a month, and she said, I know now why I'm here. And I said, why are you here? And she said, these people don't smile. They don't have anything happy that they think about. And she said, and I smile all the time, and I have a lot of things to be happy about, and I'm going to share that with them. And I said, that is exactly why you're here. You are bringing happiness to these people that just feel they're giving up, And I walk around now and I see kids that are 25 years old and they're giving up. And I'm going, are you out of your mind? Like, let me like just beat you a little bit over the head and say, wake up. You just want to slap them, right? Like, wake up. There's so much to be thankful for. So anyway, those things are things that we are doing and helping people with that. And so I've had a lot of really incredible experiences, meeting lovely, lovely people, and people who do want some help and really want to change the world and help the world, help us bring light into the world and bring us up, move us toward our ascension, bring that creator's love into our lives more. That's why I think my garden is growing so much. All those fairies are coming around, and I got love going on, and the flowers are love.
Fairies are very important in the garden. Very important.
Very important in the garden. Yes. And so I do think that I'm going to write a book about those experiences. I think that's one thing that's coming, and along with all of the there's a lot more angels coming in. Right. I do want to say this, though, that because these times the earth has never seen times like this. We've always had times when there are wars, and we've had, like the Roman occupation when Jesus was born and all that. Right. But we have never quite seen so much underhanded propaganda trying to control the whole planet, all of us, in such a diabolical, dark way as we do right now, and bringing that light and that love and the love of the creator, and that, Jesus tried to do it at his time. And I've always said, I don't want to quite go where Jesus did, because look what happened to him.
Right.
Well, I actually have a quote. If you aspire to be Christ-like, you'd best prepare to be crucified.
That's it. That is so it, and but by doing it the way that we are doing it, with bringing together people of like minds, with that are so loving and so giving of their time to really give of their energies and their love, and bring the love of the creator in to change the world, change the earth itself, the dirt, the air. I mean, I'm trying to clean all these chemtrails out of the air myself, and clean the water and clean up all the pollution that we have in order to make a better world for our children, our grandchildren, our great grandchildren. I mean, I think about all of them. What are we handing down to them? And this pendulum that has gotten so dark, we definitely see it in the entertainment world. I can tell you, the pendulum, I believe, is starting to swing the other way. I see it in some of the tracking that I do in my own career, in my own industry. We're seeing it go back, and that's what I'm really working for, is to bring that light in. And so I'll tell you a story. It's right before, so we'll end with stories because I'm a storyteller, so I have to tell a story. So right before the COVID started, before we knew there was a pandemic going to come, right? So we're talking August of 2019, right? Because the COVID really started in September. We just didn't know it until January. We just didn't know it.
And
so in August of 2019, I was asleep in my bedroom and I heard a knock on the bedroom. The bedroom door is open, by the way, but I heard a knock on the door and I woke up. Now I'm awake. I'm not asleep for this. And I'm awake. And I look up and there's Jesus standing there. And I said, wow, what are you doing here? Haven't seen you for a while now, but what are you doing here? And he said, I want you to go to the front door. And I said, okay. And I got up and I walked to the front door and he said, now I want you to open the front door. And I opened the front door. Now, those two things I found out to the both is that is surrender to Jesus. Was I did what he asked twice. He said, I want you to get up and go to the front door. And I did. Now I want you to open the door. And I did. He did not open it for me. And I looked outside, and in my front lawn, I have 2 Adirondack chairs. I now have 3, but I had 2 at the time. And in one chair was sitting Michael the Archangel. And another one was sitting my deceased husband. Okay. He had been dead for about 5 years at this point. 4 years, 5 years. Okay. So then Jesus said, now I want you to walk out and start walking. And I started walking, and so that's the third thing that I did. Right. So I walked down the steps, and I stood at the bottom of the steps. I didn't go out where Michael the Archangel was, and Michael the Archangel, he didn't say a word. Nobody said a word. They looked at me, but they didn't say a word, and they pointed. I live on a golf course, this beautiful golf course that was built right after World War I. Right. So the trees go from here to heaven. But straight out, my mother built this house that I live in, and the reason she built it was from the kitchen window. She could look 1 mile down that fairway, and she said, when I look out this window of my kitchen, the Elysian fields of heaven cannot be more beautiful than the view that I have. And down as we looked down, I saw Jesus's 10,000 angels, wing to wing, wing to wing. And standing there with their feet hovering just a little above the earth. They were not on the earth, and that's important. They were not on the earth. Right. They had not touched earth. And all they said, and they were singing, and then all they sang was, we are here. And the first thing I thought was, okay, I am 70 plus years old. Why are they here? And why are there 10,000 of them that I'm seeing? Goodness knows what real saints are saying. They're probably saying 100,000 of them, right? And what is coming? And I just thought something's coming. I don't know what's coming, but something's coming. And then when the pandemic, and nobody knew. I mean, astrologers, anybody, nobody knew that it was a pandemic, but they knew something dark was coming. Right. There were dark. I had dreams that there was a dark cloud. I had dreams that I was in a elevator with chaos going around me, but I was safe. But I did not know what it was. When the pandemic came, I went, that was it. They were warning me about that. So now that's the first story. Now then on, and I'll have to look it up in my notes because now I've forgotten, but it was July, I want to say July 19th. July 19th of the pandemic, the following July 2020.
Right.
July 19th. I had another dream. I was woken up at 2:00 in the morning. And it's important that you remember 2:00 in the morning. And I woke up and I went to another bedroom, and I was told to open this drawer in a drawer, this one drawer, and I pulled out the miraculous medal of Mary.
Oh.
Now, first of all, it was my dead husband's chest of drawers.
Right.
He was not Catholic. There's no reason. I've never seen this miraculous medal of Mary. There's no reason he should have that. And I had gotten rid of all this stuff. There was just a few things left. I had some little Halloween thingies he had in there. But that miraculous medal of Mary. So I picked up the miraculous medal of Mary. And this is at 2:00 in the morning. And I was told, go to your computer and look it up. So I looked up Catherine Lebre, Saint Catherine Lebre, who had commissioned this who saw the miraculous medal, and what her story was. On July 19th at 2:00 in the morning in 1865, she was woken up by a child who said, "Get up and come into the chapel." And in the chapel, Mary appeared to her, and she said, "There is a pandemic coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to have this and this medal. I want you to strike this medal." And she showed her not the back of the medal, because that was added later, but just the front of the medal with Mary standing there with all the stars around her. Okay. Right. And she had that medal stricken and made. She went to the priest and told him about it. And she gave that medal out to all of the people in her congregation, and because she was a nun. Mm-hmm. And she gave it out, and Mary came to her another couple times anyway, but she had this done. Everyone who wore one of those medals did not have the bubonic plague that went all through Europe for another year after that. So I immediately bought those medals and I sent them to all my nieces, my grandnieces and nephews, and my grandchildren, and everybody in my family. And so that was just a huge magical moment, I guess, is the thing to say.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, synchronicity. Yeah, magical moment. I mean, I had the angels waking me up and saying, "You have to do this," and so.
And you listened.
Exactly on the same day, the same time that child came to Saint Catherine Lebre. I was woken up by that child's voice saying, "Get up and go to and I thought, why am I going to this bedroom and picking up this medal? This is ridiculous."
Mm-hmm.
But it's not.
But it's not.
But it's not.
I mean, it's.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, right. So, there you go. So.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I finished just in time.
Well, I don't know that you finished,
Yeah.
but we have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
What do you want to do with that 5 minutes?
And in that 5 minutes, I just want to say that there, when everybody talks about angels, everybody knows about the archangels and the angels and all the 7 things. But there is something new that has been added that I want people to understand. There are right now, because of the times that we're living in, and because human beings are being attacked, and they need to know that this is a spiritual battle for Earth, and they are being attacked. There are alpha angels now, and there are battle angels, and they are coming in, and you call on your angels and you ask and say, "I want protection. I want St. Michael's." And St. Michael has huge armies now. I want those angels to come in and protect me, to protect my children, my neighbors, my neighborhood, my house. everything, even my car, when I'm driving around, protect the car so that the car is not attacked. It can be attacked by a deer running across the street.
Right.
It's not synchronicity anymore. It's not an accident anymore. They are trying to take us out in every way they can think of, whether it's blue beams in Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is, and I noticed that you have a blue shirt on, or if it's, no matter what it is, but alpha angels are there. The battle angels are there to battle those evil spirits on the other side. The alpha angels are there to cloak you and to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
So call on your angels. You have to ask, and then make sure you say thank you. That's all they want, is they want to help you. They're just sitting around going, you have to, they're not allowed to intervene in human life unless
you ask. Free will.
You have to ask.
Free will.
Free will. Free will. You have to ask. So start your day and ask, and start your night and ask, and say thank you. Thank you, angels. Thank you, angels. And that's all they want. And I mean, I feel their love. And I just want to say is, if they want to thank you for this show, because I'm going to start crying. This is not my show.
Don't do that.
This is their show.
Right.
They want this show, and they want these words to come out, and they thank you for doing this for them.
Well, I just want to say that for me, and I want to know if this means anything to you, at the conclusion of every day, I end the day with the 23rd Psalm, and that's how I say thank you.
That is I love that song. I love it. Yeah, I agree. That's a great way to say thank you. That's a great way.
And they sent you to us.
Yes.
When I asked, what can I do?
And by the way, the skull had quite a bit to say to this one.
Yeah, he did. The skull was very busy. Yeah.
But, that's why I was letting you talk about the 2 a.m. and all that.
Yeah.
About 6 months ago, I said, okay, what can I help with?
Yeah.
And they said, you'll know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ah.
So thank you for gracing us and helping to get the word out, and all that you do. We are so grateful for you and the works that you are doing, that you have done, that are there for people when they are ready to ascend.
Yes. Thank you. God bless you. God bless you both. And please keep doing what you're doing. We need you.
We need everyone.
We need everyone.
We need everyone. We do.
Everybody has to do their own work.
Yeah, we do.
And everybody has to use their free will to turn this around.
Yes, they do. They do. Yeah. They do.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just, contact Catherine. There's her website. And thank you to everyone.
And if they have an angel story, they can write to me at cathlanigan1@gmail.com.
There you go. Okay.
If they have an angel story, it's Cath, CATH, Lanigan, 1@gmail.com. If you have an angel story, I would love to share your story and put it in the next book.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And have a blessed week. See you next week, guys. And, as always, we love you. Bye.
Bye.